watching Dante's Boxing Nation. Woo! Hey. Yeah.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So the clips you guys are watching right now is of hot prospect Tristan Kalkreuth. He's 7-0 with 5 knockouts. I think you guys are going to be hearing a lot about him in the next year or so. But the reason why you guys are hearing about him now because Jermall Charlo just introduced him to the world on his Instagram page. This is one of Jermall Charlo's sparring partners. Now, what makes that so interesting is the fact that Tristan is 6'4" and he's a cruiserweight. Now, obviously, it could just be a coincidence, but it would seem this would be the perfect sparring partner for Jermall Charlo to prepare for a David Benavidez fight. This guy is actually bigger and taller than David Benavidez. Now, I don't know how long Jermall Charlo has been working with Tristan, but you could see that Tristan was doing the pads with Jermall Charlo's trainer, Rodney Shields. So really, there's no telling. I mean, just the timing of Jermall Charlo posting this picture of him training with a cruiserweight seems like he's sending a message. Now, for those of you guys who don't know the entire story, Jermall Charlo originally called out David Benavidez over a year ago. He talked about moving up to 168, and there was only one fighter that he mentioned, and that was David Benavidez. He said he wants to fight for the WBC belt. Like I said, that was a year ago. And then more recently, maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Jermall Charlo once again mentioned David Benavidez's name. This time, David, he responded because Jermall was talking reckless. Jermall, he said, "I'll break this man's neck," etc., etc. So that's when he started to get under David's skin, because now David is so focused on wanting to fight Jermall Charlo, he's not even talking about his upcoming fight against Ronald Ellis. All he talks about is fighting Jermall Charlo. In fact, he doesn't even care about the Canelo Alvarez fight anymore, because the WBC, they tried to give David a handout by basically setting up another title eliminator bout where David was supposed to fight Anthony Durrell again, the guy that he just stopped. And then after that fight, he would be in line to fight Canelo Alvarez. Well, David Benavidez, he actually turned down the WBC's offer for a title eliminator. Why? Because he wants Jermall Charlo. So after some of David's more recent interviews where he continues to call out Jermall Charlo, he finally put up a post of David Benavidez doing an interview, and Charlo simply said, "Okay, make it happen." And then he tells David Benavidez, "Don't run." To me, it sounded like he was basically saying, when I sign this contract, don't start making excuses. Don't try to pull out of the contract. That's the way I interpreted what he said. Now, going back to Jermall Charlo's sparring partner, it could actually mean something or it can mean nothing at all. There's no doubt fighters always spar bigger fighters. That's a normal thing in sparring. But once again, it's the timing that I'm looking at. It's the timing that Jermall Charlo would share this information with the boxing world. Share that he's sparring with a guy that's pretty much like a David Benavidez clone. We don't really know what Jermall Charlo is planning right now. We know what David Benavidez wants. David wants a Jermall Charlo fight, and that's no cap right there. But we're gonna find out soon how bad Jermall Charlo wants the David Benavidez fight, especially once he makes his announcement of who he's fighting next. I believe it's a strong indication that he will be facing David Benavidez in September if his very next opponent is a super middleweight. This will be the 3rd weight class that Jermall Charlo will be moving up to, if he does move up to 168. You know, I will say, even though it was Jermall Charlo that called out David Benavidez first, it's really sad that a lot of times fighters on the coincidental list, they usually have to put themselves at a disadvantage to get the actual fights that they want. This is the same thing that happened with Andre Ward. Andre Ward had been calling out Gennady Golovkin for years simply because of the fact that Golovkin said he'll fight anyone from 154 to 168. At the time, Andre Ward was pound for pound the best fighter in the world. So you would have thought automatically Golovkin would want to go after Andre so he could prove that he's the best in the world. That wasn't the case. So as Andre kept pressing for that fight, because fans and everyone else, including HBO, felt that that was too tough of a fight for Gennady Golovkin, HBO decided to offer Andre Ward a 3-fight deal to move up in weight and fight Sergey Kovalev instead, so they could try to keep Gennady Golovkin a star at 168. That didn't work too well for HBO, because when they put him on pay-per-view, he completely bombed. They thought that he was going to be the new Floyd Mayweather, and that still hasn't happened. But anyway, Andre Ward, he moved up to 175, and he had to beat Sergey Kovalev. Sergey, at the time, a lot of websites actually had him pound for pound #1, the best fighter in the world. There's no doubt about it, Andre Ward was at a slight disadvantage moving up in weight, but he still got the job done. End up beating Kovalev twice and knocking him out the second time. And keep in mind, guys, by way of contrast, Sergey Kovalev is a far more difficult opponent, a difficult style to face than a David Benavidez for Jermall Charlo, because David Benavidez is far more easier to figure out. Now, this is not to suggest David Benavidez is easy to beat, but you know what he's going to do. With Sergey Kovalev, he was very tricky. He had a good jab, he knew how to box, he had a strong amateur pedigree, and he had power on top of all of that. So obviously my point with the comparison is Jermall Charlo would be attempting to pretty much do the same thing that Andre Ward did, if Charlo decides to take the David Benavidez assignment. I hope he really does, because there are no other options for Charlo outside of the Demetrius Andre fight, and he has made it very clear. He has no interest in the Andre fight. In fact, he would rather move up in weight and fight a bigger, younger champion in David Benavidez than to fight a Demetrius Andre. That's because styles make fights. And I think almost everyone knows Andre has one of the most difficult styles to go up against. So if Charlo is not going to fight Andre, he really has nowhere else to go but towards a David Benavidez fight. If Jermall Charlo was lucky enough to beat David Benavidez, it would be a huge win that would completely catapult his career. But regardless of who wins the fight, Charlo or Benavidez, once again, it puts an enormous amount of pressure on Canelo Alvarez to fight the winner. Hopefully we get this fight and we get it soon. Charlo versus Benavidez. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, then this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo de Key Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodekey.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram. Fellas, I've got some great news for you. If you've lost your hair or have a receding hairline, the time has come when you can finally get your hairline back through a process called scalp micropigmentation. So here's how it works. It's a hair tattoo that replicates the look of your hair follicles when you have fully shaved it down. So to get this hookup, make sure you follow and contact my man Scalp Carolinas on Instagram.